Um, Hello and welcome to Exaflix. This is our monthly club where we invite guests along to discuss, review and explore titles of films, documentaries and dramas, all related to technology, computing and computer science. That's why we're really here. Now, a little secret, this all started as a bit of a dare. Somebody posted something, it may have been a teacher, in an online sort of social media platform, and they were bemoaning the fact that, gosh, there's no films or dramas or TV programs if you're a computer teacher. I mean, if you're an English teacher or drama or history teacher, there's loads of things. And that got me thinking, I'm sure we can do something about that. So that's kind of why Exaflix has come into where it is. It's not to try and prove this person wrong, maybe just to suggest that they might reconsider their standpoint and go, oh, actually, there are all these great titles. And that's why every month we invite some guests along and we ask them to pick some titles, and we'll talk about our guests at the moment. Before we do, we're recording this live on the 23rd of June, 2021. And the 23rd of June, if you're a fan of Alan Turing, you will know that date because today we can celebrate Alan Turing's birthday. Happy birthday, Alan Turing. And it's also a moment in history today because it's also the day that the Bank of England actually released this £50 note. I wish I could tell you I've got a pocket full of them at the moment, but we haven't got to that point just yet. So we're going to be reviewing titles that are related to Turing's work, his life and his legacy. And joining me this evening, we have two guests. We have Christine and Paul, and they're going to introduce themselves in a little bit more detail. They're waving at the moment. And if you're watching us on YouTube and you found out that there's a little chat window at the side, please introduce yourself because we will read what you're typing in there. And if you have any questions or suggestions, you'll probably hear us respond and reply to you. So I don't know if Jerry's there. I haven't checked yet, but anybody else, just tell us who you are, where you're joining us from, and we'll go and have a look at that in a moment. Now, a few more things before we go to our guests that I just want to mention. There are some notes. If you're watching the live version, you probably see them below. If you're watching the recorded version, they're probably still below. I can add things in there. If you look at the notes, you'll find some comments and links that we've added in to help you make the most out of this event and some of the other ones. So for example, there's an information pack. So tonight's a bit unusual because we've only got one real film tonight and two other documentaries, which you can just go and watch them at any point. In fact, you don't have to sit and listen to me waffle on. You could just go and watch them now if you wanted. We normally review films and we say, here's where the film is, here you can watch trailers for the film. So we do have a film tonight. If you look at the information pack, you can find out how to go and watch that. I often do. I have this habit of going around charity shops, looking at online eBay and stuff like that. And a lot of the titles that we selected so far, I've managed to get for £1, sometimes including postage, which is a real bargain. Why am I holding up this one? Oh, well, this one, again, if you look at the comments, you could have said, why did we not choose the Imitation Game? Because we've done it before. So when we first started Exaflix, Imitation Game was the first one we chose. So if you look at the notes, you'll find a link to the recording from that. And then when you have more time, because we know teachers have got lots of free time that they really struggle to find things to do in their free time. When you have some free time, check out the playlist that we have on YouTube, the Exaflix ones, the link, and you can go and listen to some of our other reviews and see if you agree. Now, and there's a list of trailers, sorry. So if you don't want to watch the full films, you can just watch the trailers. So what's going to happen in a moment is I'm going to slow down as I am now, and then I'm going to ask our first guest, Christine, in a moment to introduce herself. So what will happen is we'll spend about 15 minutes or so discussing each of this evening's titles, where we've got Christine is going to introduce herself and then why she chose her title, which is Enigma. Then we're going to move to Paul, and Paul is going to tell us about why he has chosen his particular one. And then finally, we'll go to me and join in with the chat. So Christine, tell us a little bit more about who you are, where you work, what you do, and then let's move on to the choice for this evening.
So, hello, my name's Christine Harvey. I'm the head of computer science at Bradford Grammar School in West Yorkshire in the north of England. Soon going to be moving on to a multi-academy trust in Leeds as Director of IT. So I'm looking forward to that massively. So the film I've chosen tonight is Enigma. And I think that the main reason I chose this film is that I couldn't choose The Imitation Game because that's my go-to Alan Turing film. It's fantastic, The Imitation Game. We've used it with our year 9s in school. We actually let them watch the whole thing through. It's a fantastic film. But Enigma, I think it's a good sister or cousin to that film. The reason Enigma appeals to me is that it's a really good spy thriller. But the thing you have to realise is it's not purporting to be real. It's a fictional version of what happened at Bletchley Park and during the war. It's based on a screenplay by Tom Stobbart, and which itself is based on a novel by Robert Harris. So that's good category for me to even start thinking about watching it. It's a fictional recreation of what went on at Bletchley Park in 1943. The film, without giving too much away, I'll just give you a potted history of it if I can. It's about the fact that the Allies were keeping track of the German U-boats because they had got hold of Enigma machines and they had cracked the Enigma code. And then what happened was the Germans went and changed the Enigma code to something called the Enigma Shark in the film, which is a sort of variant of it. And at this point, there's no way that the Allies can tell where the U-boats are. And there's a huge fleet of ships coming over for America. And oh no, we don't know where the submarines are. So it's quite tense. And so they go back to the crypto analysts, the code breaking teams. And the main code breaker is a fictional character called Tom Jericho, and he's very, very loosely based on Alan Turing and the team members, but it's much more of a dramatization of events, and they try to make it into a fun film. So there's internal investigations about maybe there's a spy going on. The main character, Tom Jericho, his girlfriend goes missing. What's happened there? You know, so they've tried to make it an interesting and dramatic film, which I think they do all right. The thing I really like about it is it's the first time in all of these sort of films and clips that I've looked at about Alan Turing and the code breaking in Bletchley Park, where you actually see an Enigma machine being used. So there's some really excellent footage within the film of them using a real Enigma machine to attempt to decrypt messages. You see them setting it up with the wheels and the plugs, and you see them actually pressing the keys and using it and trying to crack the codes. So it's a really good way for pupils and teachers and people to see physically how they actually did do the code breaking, but that really abstract mathematics that was going on, they can actually see it happening. An interesting little bit of knowledge about the film, that Enigma machine that is actually being shown in the film Enigma is an original one, and it's owned by Mick Jagger of the Rolling Stones. He actually produced the film Enigma, and he lent them his actual real Enigma machine to use. And I found out, and I was looking out for this, but I didn't spot him. He does have a really small cameo role, Mick Jagger does, in the film. So I'm gonna have to rewatch it and see if I spot him again, but I didn't catch him first time. So it's one thing you could do is watch it and see if you can spot Mick Jagger from the Rolling Stones. So I won't spoil how it goes, but the parts that I'd really recommend are the actual footage of the bomb machines, the actual footage of them using the Enigma. I will throw a little warning out there, if for those of you thinking of considering using this film in school, it is a 15. And there's two reasons it's a 15. There's a very clumsy and completely unnecessary naked sex scene, which just suddenly, like, oh my gosh, there's naked people, and then it's gone again, which I think they really didn't need to put in, but it's there. So you have to be aware of that. And there is a lot of the F word in there as well. Not a lot, but there's certainly some use of the F word.
I certainly counted one use early on when some Major General so-and-so is really annoyed and he shouts the F word, and I thought, whoa, if I was a teacher playing that in a classroom, I might have had to quickly go and press the pause button and try and cover that issue.
Tom Jericho's girlfriend that goes missing is a very friendly lady with lots of people on the base at Bletchley Park, and she's
mostly male friends that she's
doing lots of F wording. So yes, it is in there. I don't think I would maybe use the whole film. I think if I did, it would definitely have to be with sixth form, and I'd definitely have to give them advance notice that would this be happening. But the clips in there, I mean, if you can extract the clips of them, the sequence of them using the Enigma machine, I think that's great. And it's a really good one to watch, just because it's a good drama, and it works well in the Harvey household because my husband's really into war films, particularly World War I films. So it's a crossover between my world and his. So that's why we like it.
I would agree. I thought it was a particularly good choice. I don't know if you watched or listened to the Imitation Game discussion we had, but one of the biggest criticisms of the Imitation Game is how much it stretches the truth. And I frequently will bump into people who say, oh, I watched the Enigma game, the Imitation Game, and they kind of think it's historically and factually accurate, and it really isn't. There's a lot of fictional elements. And I think Enigma does it the other way. It doesn't dress it up. It doesn't say this is what happens. I've changed all the names of the characters. Even shark, that's not a term that I've come across before. They did use names of fish. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not one I've come across. But you can really let yourself go into the story if you're not too caught up. There's some things that are very clearly Turing-esque, like his girlfriend at one point, it appears she's playing a game and she snatches something, but like, oh, I've got a little bit of paper, or you have something of mine, I'll have something of yours. And it's apparently his 1936 Enchidings problem paper, the first one, and I might have said the wrong year, don't quote me on that. But that's a Turing thing. It's not something that somebody else has picked up, and it's become so. It clearly there's a lot there that's meant to be Turing, but they use Tom Jericho's name instead, and they also gloss over the fact that he might not have been as interested in women as Tom Jericho was in the film, and it did make me wonder. In 2001, would that have been too brave, to have two leading men rather than a leading man and a leading lady? I don't know.
I think at the time, though, if it's set in 1943, and at the time people weren't allowed to be homosexual. However, I don't think that Tom Jericho is supposed to be Alan Turing. I think the only comparison with the fictional character Tom Jericho being Alan Turing is that this Tom Jericho is the sort of main player in cracking the code. There are other bits of historical accuracy in there that I quite like for example, well, can I say this without giving it away? I think I can.
Go ahead.
Go on. That the reason that they have to break the code again is that the Germans have stopped using one of their code books, and the final way that Tom Jericho finally breaks the code again and saves the day is by using one of the Germans' weather short signal code books that they've rescued from a sub. And that is factually correct, historically correct. It does also make reference to in the film, and you do sort of see scenes of this as well, which might be a little disturbing for some younger students. They uncover in the film a mass grave of Polish, I think it's the Katyn massacre, Katyn massacre, which is historically correct, where Russia was one of our allies, but then did this heinous massacre of the Polish soldiers and officers and just buried them all in a huge mass grave. And so there are those, like, that's not really a main part of the plot, but there are these nods to historically accurate stuff in there. And for the Mr. Harveys out there who like the historically accurate war references in there, it's nice that they've managed to keep that in, but to make it a fictional account and a fun, dramatic thriller that has lots of twists and turns. Lots of, oh, I think it's them, and oh no, it's not them, it's somebody else. So it's just a good watch.
There was one thing I thought that they did particularly well, which was there's a spy, there's somebody who's a double agent or so, and you're constantly guessing, is it him, is it her? Oh, is it her? And I thought that bit all the way right through to the end, and then it's him. Oh, but was it him all along? And is this kind of,
or was it her, Alan? I don't there is I think some of the reviews it's gone down okay. There are some criticism about the fact it's a fictional representation, but it never purports to be anything different. But it is an intelligent thriller. It does make you think, and it does have twists and turns. So great, why not?
It was a shame because, as you said, the references to the F word, the sort of semi-naked scene or so, I don't know whether it was warranted in terms of them. They could have just moved the camera on a little bit. He could have said "confounded" or something else instead.
Yeah, I think it would be really great if somebody went out there and did a radio edit version of it and just took this 10 second unnecessary nakedness out, and they just did a war siren over the odd F word, and then you could easily play it to sort of year 9s, 10s and 11s, and it would be great.
I also thought the actual first minute or two of the film I also thought was really nice, because there's all these there's like a mixture of Pathé clips and reconstructions of a bit Trafalgar Square, where you see one of the characters walking across and they've got old buses. I thought it really helped set the scene in a way that some others haven't managed to do so well. So Paul, do you want to add anything at this point, or are you itching to get onto your choice?
No, not really. I mean, I've just been sort of listening to what we're talking about. Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways the kind of the whole kind of nakedness and swearing and this kind of thing is partly just a kind of almost the price you pay for kind of going to a popular movie sometimes, isn't it? They've got to kind of put something in there for everybody to sort of try and have that mass market appeal. And when they put something in there for everybody, that doesn't necessarily mean year 9. So I think there's a lot I liked about it. I'm just picking up on one thing you mentioned earlier, Alan, which was the code names. And apparently it was historically shark. So it was Dolphin was the original Enigma, then followed by Shark in 1941. And there were a couple of other variations as well, which were Turtle and Narwhal. So a little bit of extra information there. But yeah, I mean, I think sometimes we just have to kind of sit back and relax and enjoy it. I'd prefer a little less kind of nudity and swearing, a bit more maths, but that's me. I'm not everybody. So yeah, good.
There was one scene as well I thought very, very kind of romantic, which was in my head romantic. They kept showing this film with 10 or so of these bombs, and there were all the operators there working on them. I don't think I've seen that in any. They always like in the Imitation Game, they show a single bomb, if I'm right.
Mhm.
You don't, and I think there was 250 of them, or there was a lot of them at one point. I think there was one that was built that was never used, but there was rooms and rooms full of these machines at one point.
Yeah, it was really big, and it would have been almost like being, I don't know if you've ever been on the sort of machine floor of a kind of cotton mill or something, and they've got all of those going. I think that's probably the kind of atmosphere it would have been like, just being in there, just all these things rattling along. And the kind of big drama moment you see in the film of the bomb stopping and everything going silent wouldn't really have happened, because all the others would still be. I should imagine there were probably times when there was sort of 20 minutes when they hadn't even noticed a solution had been found, because all the others were so darn noisy. But yeah, very, very big industrial scale.
Okay, Paul, should we move on to your choice? If you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, and then introduce your choice.
Yeah, so I'm Paul Powell, and I'm a teacher of computing at Sandbach School, which is in Cheshire. I've just recently moved up here. This is my first year there, and before that I was a head of department down in London. So yeah, I'm interested in sort of code breaking, all of this kind of thing, and just computing in general, really. So yeah, that's kind of me, really. So I also got a computer science background, which is kind of slightly informing my choice, my angle here. So it's the Power and Story of Information, and it's a documentary. And the bit on Turing is about sort of 10 minutes or so in the sort of last half of the documentary. And the reason I picked it is, first of all, I think Turing, in some ways, his achievements with Enigma, colossal though they are, kind of almost overshadow other work which has sort of almost had more of a lasting impact in some ways. And this is particularly focusing on some work he did in 1936, which you've already mentioned, Alan, which is he wrote a paper called On the Computable Numbers. And in it, he, as a kind of way of proving this really obscure maths theorem, actually sort of almost accidentally invents a model of computation which holds true even today. And it's a kind of an aspect which is kind of quite abstract, and so people don't understand it. And I really like the way the documentary kind of explained that, the background to it, and started linking it in with other ideas that came both before and after it as well. So we have a kind of description of the Turing machine. So this thing that he came up with to solve this problem, and the Enigma problem, and I'm not sure whether I'm saying that either correctly, but we'll pretend I am. The Enigma problem, it's essentially the problem of pure maths, because we got to a point in mathematics where people kind of realized that they didn't really know what maths was based on. So they kind of had an idea of, well, you've got all of these kind of operations. We kind of knew what they did in the physical world, and then we kind of extended that, and we went into all these areas. We invented calculus and trigonometry and all these wonderful things, and we don't really quite know what it's based on. And so there was this big push to kind of bring it down to like really, really simple rules, which involved manipulating symbols. And essentially that's what the Turing machine does. It manipulates symbols on this big tape according to a set of instructions. And there were some people who were very optimistic mathematicians who thought that you could, if you sort of had some kind of automatic machine which could manipulate symbols, you could prove whether theorems were correct or incorrect just by examining the symbols. And Turing kind of proved, well, no, you can't actually, because you can't even tell when you run a computer program whether it's ever going to finish or not. And that's a sentiment which I'm sure anybody involved with computers and writing computer programs can probably empathize with on a kind of very normal level. But yeah, it's it's something that's quite fundamental to mathematics. And so we get this model of the computer, and the thing that's brought out really nicely is how, well, all of our computers today are sort of, in a way, footnotes to the Turing machine. And if you had an actual Turing machine with a theoretically infinite tape, you could exactly replicate anything any one of our computers does, albeit very, 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 very slowly. So I kind of just like bringing that aspect out. There were a couple of kind of little details in there in terms of, you know, the binary tape on the original Turing machine. You could have any symbols you liked, he didn't mind. So he wasn't kind of, and I think in some ways it kind of tied the theoretical foundations of computer science in terms of him inventing this Turing machine as a kind of thought experiment to tightly into the kind of development of the computer, which almost came as a practical alongside Turing's ideas.
I think there's one thing that the program does very well, though, is like, as you were talking about this universal machine, it presented theoretically, the program does a very good job of saying, well, look, and because it starts off, which I thought was a really good bit, in 1936, this is what a computer was. It was a person, and they were doing this and this and this. Let's remove all these objects away. Let's remove the operator away, and then we're just left with this. And then it's this roll out this big sheet with all the ones and zeros on. And, you know, if they'd been some other symbols, I think viewers may have been, oh, what are these symbols? What do they represent? So I think, yeah, it didn't necessarily have to have binary digits on there, but I think it will have helped some viewers relate to it, because it's a very lovely program. I found it, you know, more lovely than watching wallpaper, I will say. I mean, and wallpaper can be very lovely, but there's a lot of very nice colors and imagery. And one thing I would warn people is, if you're only watching this to find out about Turing, you're going to have to watch half an hour of other things first, which are all absolutely relevant, but you're only going to get 15, 20 minutes of Turing kind of halfway through. But it does an absolutely marvelous job, because it really does help bring it all together, I think, in a way. And Jim Al-Khalili, you're going to struggle to find a better science presenter or communicator than him. And it may even be, I could imagine watching this late at night and being really fascinated and lulling off to sleep at the same time, because it is such a easy watch. And the great thing about it is it's available on YouTube. We can go and watch it at any point, whereas I struggled a bit to find a way of watching Enigma easily. It appears on TV every few years, not regularly, but your choice. We can just go and watch it whenever we like. I've got lots more I could say, but yeah, go on.
It just occurred to me, just as you were talking there, is that the first victims of having their job automated by computers were computers.
Yeah.
I just never thought about that before.
I've got to say really quickly before you do yours, Alan, I noticed it was half an hour before it got onto Alan Turing, but actually that first half an hour, I think, was my favourite bit. You know, relating information being encoded as writing right back to Mesopotamia, and then talking about the punch cards for the jacquard brocade looms and how that was used as punch cards for computers, and your bit about, you know, actually a computer is a woman. It is something I've constantly told my pupils for the past 20 years, that originally our computer was a woman with a pencil. So I like the first 30 minutes. I think they're great, but not if you want to talk about Turing. But the actual, the way that they took an abstract concept the thought experiments that were going on at the time and animated them, I thought was beautiful.
That Maxwell one, there's one with a cage that's
Yeah.
hot and
Yeah.
cold. I had to watch that through a few times. I'm like, what? Where are we going with this? Oh, I'll come back and watch this another day, because basically it's a filter. Yeah, like, oh, we can pass these things through this way. Oh, okay. But it's like the Schrodinger's cat. Wait, so there's a cat? No, there's not a cat. Do you need a? Oh. So yeah, I was a little bit lost on that one. I love they had these little 3D models or characters, of Samuel Morse, for example. And I thought that was so clever, rather than having, like, if there was a Dick and Dom one where they have actors dressed up as those people. I just thought the visuals, the photography, it was all so nicely done. I could imagine many year 9 classes and Key Stage 3 classes going, because I don't think it's really pitched for a younger audience. I think we're talking about 15 at the minimum, upwards up to adults.
I think
there's no swear words or nudity in it.
No, that's true. Thank goodness. I'm not sure. Much as I love Jim Al-Khalili, yeah.
The bit about the universal Turing machine would fit really nicely with the A level, maybe as a sort of a 5-minute intro to when you're talking about Turing machine. I think it would fit nicely there.
I thought there was lots of wonderful teachable moments. I was going to mention that one, so thanks, Christine, for getting there before me. But the other one, we talked about Samuel Morse, and people were inventing all these things, and then Samuel Morse just wiped the floor because he came in with this idea. And not only was it to encode the letters as characters, but he did it in an efficient way. So E is the most commonly used letter in the sort of Western alphabet. So that would just be pip. It wasn't dash, it was pip, which was the shortest one, and X, which is the less frequent. Well, we can give that 3 dots and 2 dashes. And I don't know if you've explored the locked-in syndrome example in terms of programming and algorithms and all that, but I thought there's a really nice example. Come on, somebody else say something.
That matches with when I saw that about the Morse code. I knew what Morse code was, but I hadn't appreciated that the most frequent characters were the shortest. And that actually matches quite nicely with Huffman coding, which is taught at GCSE. Well, it's in the AQA GCSE. And I thought that would be, again, a nice match for the Huffman coding, most frequent do with shorter.
I was actually just teaching a lesson today, and one of the tasks I was giving to some of the more able year 9s was creating a Python program to translate Morse into text, which, it's not too hard to do. But
with year 7, yeah.
Sorry?
With year 7.
Year 9, yeah.
Okay.
I'm not going to talk about my year 7 lesson today.
Okay. So there was another couple of aha moments for me. And it was only then with the discovery of electricity that communication could become non-physical. And I had to say, oh yeah, so we didn't have to send tablets of stone or have people, riding across the desert in a horse with a satchel with handwritten notes in it, because electricity then meant you could beep, 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 or, telegraphically over the radio waves send things. That was
the way they called it, the Victorian internet. The telegraph was the Victorian internet. I thought that was lovely as well.
I believe there's actually, if you go really far back, I think there's semaphore towers really far back where they're kind of using sort of a bunch of blokes, sort of soldiers sort of stuck in this tower to sort of act as manual repeaters for information, kind of signaling it onto the next one. There's a sort of more complex version of the kind of beacons used for the Armada and this kind of thing. But yeah, it's really interesting.
There was a couple of other things I thought as well you could teach that there was examples. So abstraction, I thought, then the other phrase, I'll come back to me in a moment. There's a clip where they play you can see a water drops into a glass.
Mhm.
And it's like, yes, but if you look closer and slower and closer and slower, there's all the things that you don't see. I thought that was beautifully done as well, you know. So we've got a comment coming in. I think the semaphore is mentioned in the Hornblower books. John's posted that in the YouTube
okay.
chat. I remember as well watching a really good series on Netflix, the streaming channel, about oh my goodness, the Khan, the Mong, oh, I cannot remember the name. You know what? Sorry.
Give us a clue.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the name. But, the Mongolian Emperor Khan, Genghis Khan, and about how they had a communication network set up where, you know, people would ride to a station, swap over, ride back, and they, you know, they were relying on horses and people to do so. So prior to the Victorian network. Any more?
It's interesting. It's almost like you're doing packet switching with, you know, Mongolian riders instead of Ethernet cables.
Okay, if there's no more comments on that, we can move on to our final choice of the evening. And I'm kind of bracing myself here for some criticism. So hello, I'm Alan. I don't think I need to introduce myself because you've come to these things before. I'm the host, and it means I get to choose something as well. So once I'd heard the other two choices, and I looked at Paul's and I looked at Christine's choice, I thought I need to do something very different. So I've tried to go for a much younger audience. So I've selected Absolute Genius, which is a documentary for children going back. I think this one is from series 2, which was originally screened in 2014. It was only a few months ago. I was looking through iPlayer and I think I typed in the word Turing and I found that this episode, so I think the BBC from time to time make it available on iPlayer and then they remove it and reintroduce it. But you can actually, if you find the link below, you can watch it on YouTube. So it's Dick and Dom. My children in their 20s, but they remember Dick and Dom in the bungalow on a Saturday morning. And although they're almost as old as I am now, children can still relate to them, their hijinks and silly antics and that. So this episode, Absolute Genius, they do focus on other pioneers in politics and engineering throughout history, but this one is Alan Turing. And you could just watch the first 12 minutes of the episode and not watch anymore. And that would, I would recommend that. So a very concise potted history right at the beginning. Turing was born here. Here's a photograph of him. And I thought for a younger audience, they had lots of animations and sound effects like jing, explosions and all this sort of stuff. I mean, I don't know if 7-year-olds like that. You can probably, little Alan's not quite old enough there, Paul, is he?
No.
But maybe in a few years he can tell me whether it was a good choice. They do dumb down some of the facts to make them accessible, like, oh, he worked with others to help end the war. Well, that's not fiction, but you know, he didn't do it single-handedly. So they condense a lot of the detail to present it in a fast and accessible way. They then go and they start making references to Enigma, but they completely leave out Morse code altogether. And I was, that's a shame, because I think when we start talking about codes and ciphers, we can say, well, Morse is a code, Enigma is a cipher, although people say Enigma code, it's not strictly a code. And I thought there was a little opportunity there that maybe, but if they're trying to keep it accessible and fast and short, then it probably wasn't the right time. But they go and then meet James Grime, who's a maths communicator, and he explains how the Enigma machine worked, and there's some very nice demonstrations where, look, if I keep hitting this key on the Enigma keyboard, it's never going to show me the same letter. It's going to show me all the other letters. It will substitute or encrypt to another letter, but never as itself. And I've never seen that. I mean, I knew it was true, but I've never seen that in any of these other things that we've watched. So I thought that made it. And here's a little question for you. So this is for Paul, Christine, or anybody who's brave enough to type in the YouTube chat. So there's a link between the number of possible combinations that you can get with a 3-rotor Enigma machine and the company that I work for. But it's probably a little bit of a tenuous link, so I'll let you ponder on that while I whiffle and waffle on a little bit more. What do you know what the link is? It's to do with the number of Christine knows. You already know.
Yeah,
Oh,
we all know.
Oh, what is it then?
Well, don't you work for EXA Networks?
Yeah.
And isn't EXA a measurement? We've got kilo, mega, giga, tera, and then does it go straight to EXA? Is there a glotter in there, a lotter, and then an
They're at the other end, yeah.
Yeah, something like that, but it's a million is an EXA.
Or a billion, if you want to use less words and less letters. So it's you hear it, 100 people say 157, 158, 159 million combinations. So it's easier to say 159 EXA combinations, but well done, Christine. We'll send a prize to you in the post. Shall I pause for a moment so you can say it was a rubbish choice, Alan?
Well, I don't think it was rubbish. With it being Alan Turing's birthday today, and with me working on ciphers and Caesar ciphers with my year 9s today, I did actually use the first 10 minutes of this clip that you've come up with. I think the sequence of them using the Enigma, like you say, where they keep pressing the A, and they did actually encrypt a message and decrypt the message briefly using it, happened to be the word bratverse, which my year 9s thought was like, oh.
Yeah,
but
which was the
good.
plain text and which was the encrypted one.
Yeah, exactly. I like they went down to Bletchley and they spoke to one of the old bomb operators. She was a bit cross with them being quite irreverent, but I don't think the children picked up on that. I also like that they went up to Manchester and included Baby, the first stored program computer there, because I have to mention that. So to have that in there as well. And next lesson, our 9s are going out and doing a cipher challenge where they'll be building their own cipher wheel and using it to decrypt these cipher messages. So actually them seeing a cipher wheel that James Grimes was using in that was perfect timing for me. So thank you for sharing it.
Do you want to chip in at this point, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, it's irreverent, but I thought actually that's something which the kids often get on with. If you find an irreverent clip about anything, then generally it goes down fairly well. So as an educational thing, I thought that they got enough right for the kind of age group that it's aimed at. And yeah, they kind of glossed over some details and that kind of thing. But for anybody who wants to disappear down that rabbit hole, there's 100,000 videos on YouTube which quite happily go into detail about kind of letter swaps and all the rest of it. And they, I thought that overall they presented it pretty fairly. Yeah.
When I was watching it, I've watched it a few times, but I forget because I watched so many things. I was about 10, 11 minutes in. I thought, oh my God, is this just another dude fest? It's just a load of blokes, white males, all talking about technology and computing. Why do they not get any women in? Surely they could get somebody female to talk. And then they go to Bletchley. I thought, oh, we're saved. And then she's telling them off, isn't she? No, it's not quite like that. Oh, right, okay. And then Franz Scott, who's another science communicator, and they do the thing with a pizza. That was lost on me a little bit. Like, we're going to teach.
I like that.
Oh, you liked it.
Yeah,
okay.
I did. I kept it running just for the little pizza bit because it was a great. I thought, why are they doing pizza? But so were the class. Why are they doing pizza? But it was about the fact that. The logic is built up from 2 choices, yes or no, 1 or 0. And with 3 possible options, there are 8 different outcomes, and so it was a nice introduction, that bit. I think the last part, just stop it. It just started going on about traffic
to differ.
and fireworks.
There wasn't really 8 options, because one of them was ham and pineapple on a pizza, and that's not really an option, is it?
Yes, it is for some. Some, not for me. I'm vegetarian,
but yeah,
don't be badding
the Hawaiian pizza, you know. Going back to what Paul was saying as well about the flippancy, the irreverence. Yeah, I think that's a trope that I use from time to time. I don't know if you've seen I did a virtual tour to the Alan Turing Memorial Bench, and I think, you know, in this, so for example, in Sackville Gardens in Manchester, there's a bronze cast of Alan Turing sat on a bench, and it says behind him Alan Matheson Turing, and then there's some purportedly supposed to be Enigma script, except there's a flaw in it. And you could just say, oh, this is Enigma because, but I like saying to children, why is the flaw there? Was it done deliberately? Did somebody knock it? You know, I was trying to get children to realize that at the end of the day, it was a human that made it, and humans can make mistakes. So I like a little bit of the irreverence, but not too much, yeah, in small measures. What did you think? Did you see the bit where Matt Parker demonstrated the RGB values in a spreadsheet, and then you zoom out? You don't remember seeing that? Or
no, I like that bit. It was a good. It'd be useful for teaching data representation. I thought that was quite nice. It didn't really fit with the Turing thing or the code thing. Well, it's encoding, I suppose. I think the whole clip, the Dick and Dom clip, there was quite a bit of confusion between code, encoding and ciphers, but then that's, you know, everywhere, isn't it, that those get confused. But one minute they're talking about ciphers and code breaking, and then the next minute they're talking about encoding, and then they're talking about data representation and binary code. So it did get a little mixed in places, but
that's right.
Definitely good parts you could use.
Yeah, they talk about barcodes and well, dress codes, Morse code, and then Dick's safe code, without talking about ciphers at all.
No, there's one really worrying bit as well when they were testing something out and they needed something to encrypt, and one of the presenters just shouted out, "Dick, encrypt Dick," and my year nines were like, and I'm like, yeah, it's his name, because I'm not entirely sure if the current generation know about Dick and Dom. My children are a little bit older, like yours, Alan, and they remember Dick and Dom, but I don't know, are they still current? Are they still out there?
If it's a year 9, they would have been 2 or 3 years old when this series first aired on TV. And there are a few things now that haven't aged. I mean, there's a bit with this is a computer, and they pull out the Raspberry Pi. You think, gosh, was that the only Raspberry Pi they had available, because it's the first release, the Mark 1 of the Model B. So we've been talking about the film Enigma. We've been talking about, it's got a very long title, presented by Jim Al-Khalili, the Power of Information.
Yeah,
it's hard to remember. I've got it. The power and
stories as well.
The power and story of information.
That's it. Yeah.
And Dick and Dom's absolute genius. And we were joined this evening by Paul and Christine, and we're going to be doing more of these in future months. I think we've got a CGI VFX one coming up where somebody went to watch the first screening of Toy Story. He's going to be telling us about that. And we've got some other things in the plan. Christine and Paul, you've been fabulous guests. Thank you for joining us. I hope you will come back and join us at some point in the future when we choose other themes. And I think that's it, really. There's not much else to say. So thank you very much, everybody.